let's get back to making this river headboard. If you haven't seen the first part, I encourage you to click on the link in the upper corner and go check out how we got started. So let's do it. So I'm going to be using a couple of 8/4 maple boards to make up the post. I'm starting to use the table saw, but it just binds. So I found that the easier way to do this was on the bandsaw. It's no binding and it just goes right through it. So to start the milling process, I'm going to take it to the joiner and joint the two faces, and then take it over to the table saw and the planer to get it down to pretty close to the thicknesses that I want. Time for glue up. So I'm using Titebond 3, not because I want it waterproof or food safe or anything, but just because of the size of the board. I just wanted to make sure that I had enough open time to get all the glue spread out before the glue started spreading up, and Titebond 3 just suited that deal perfectly. Now that the glue is all dried up the next day, I'm going to take them back over to the joiner and get them flush again. Take out any imperfections maybe while the boards moved while they were clamped up. I have to admit, this part made me a little nervous. After all the time and money that went into getting the slab to this point, I just wanted to make sure that I did it right. So I'm just going to cut it down to the width that I'm going for. To get the right width, I needed to set up the frame and clamp the post to that frame. That way I get an idea of what I need the width to be. All right, so now that I've got it cut down to the right length, and that right length is the width of the bed plus 3 inches, 1.5 inches for a tenon on that side, 1.5 inches for a tenon on this side. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and mark out all of my layout lines where I need to route the tenon in and then cut the individual tenon. So that's what I'm going to do now. The slab is around 1.5 inches thick. So what I'm shooting for is about a total of 1 inch thick tenon. So I'm going to take about a 1/4 inch off the top and a 1/4 inch off the bottom, and that's going to give me my main tenon. Even though I'm going to be using a router to take off most of the material, I wanted to use the table saw to give me a good clean reference to go against, and then the router will just go right up against that. Let me talk a minute and explain what I've got going on here. So the idea is that I'm going to have 3 tenons on either side. 2 of the tenons will be in wood, 1 of the tenons on each side will be in resin. And the idea is that with the wood movement being up and down rather than lengthwise, I don't want to use glue on the wood because that's going to move. So I'm going to elongate the holes for the pegs you'll see here in a little bit, and there won't be any glue except for just the top to hold the peg in. On the tenons, I will be using resin on that because the resin's not going to shift, it's not going to move. Therefore, I can glue that one in. I'm going to be using a rasp to round over the edges on the tenon to match the rounded edges that the router's going to make when I create the mortises. You'll see that here in just a second. I find it's easier when you're making mortises to not try to go up to the edge as you're making them, but take each end and use the router to basically drill a hole at both ends and then come back and route in between the holes like you see I'm doing here. It just helps so that you don't go over your line. Going to round over the bottoms of the posts with the chisel here and a little bit of sandpaper later just to keep it from chipping out as the bed moves through time. I'm going to be sanding both the slab and the post from 80 on the slab up to 600, and then for the post I just went from 120 up to 320. No need to go up higher on the wood. I just went to 600 to make sure I got all the most of the fine scratches out of the resin, and it turned out really nicely. The resin ended up with blue and some black in it, so I wanted to change the color of the post, so I chose to go with some India ink. I just put a couple of coats on it and just used a Scotch-Brite pad to smooth it out, and applied anywhere I thought it might be a light covering, and I was really happy with the way this India ink worked. I'm using a transfer punch to mark the locations for the pins, and then when I go to actually drill it, I'm going to move the bit 1/16 of an inch closer to the slab, and what that's going to do is give a really tight connection and close that joint up. This is just a 1/4 inch, either maple or pine, can't remember what it was, dowel that I picked up from the big box store. I'm just cutting it down to length, and then I'm using the pencil sharpener here without the cover to put a point on it, and it just makes it easier for it to get into the holes that I drilled offset. So I didn't think about the pins when I originally dyed the whole post. I still would have done it that way, but I just had to sand them flush and then just reapply that ink. Odie's oil is starting to be one of my favorite finishes. The finish it gives is really nice. It's not shiny. I think it's somewhere in between like a gloss and a matte finish, which is really perfect. It really does a great job on the resin, and a little bit goes a long way, as I've said before. And I love this shot here where you can see it looks like a spine x-ray going down the center of that. I just love the way that resin cured. I apologize for the lighting here and maybe not the best shots. It was a little more challenging getting these shots up in the room and where the bed was. So if you do have any questions about what I did or how I attached it, please just leave me a comment. This was a really fun build. It was very challenging. It was my biggest build. I learned a lot from it, and I hope you picked up a few things along the way. If you did enjoy this, please leave a comment. Please give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. All of that helps the channel out. And as always, I wish you and your family a blessed day. Thank you.